Hello you lovely lot, hope you're all well. My name is Alan and today's video is all about bugging out. Fantasy or reality? My opinions obviously. I'd love to read your comments as to what you think it really means. Let's crack on. Bugging out. We all pretty much know what the term means, but people's opinion of it vary greatly. Now, in reality, bugging out is leaving one location because there's a threat to life and moving to another location that you deem safer. That's it. So really, it's just evacuation. On the last video that I done, which was about lightening the load and carrying some warmer kit, one of the comments that was placed within that video was, I assume it was a guy that said, only an idiot would bug out into the wilderness, or words to that effect. The video had nothing to do with that really, but that comment, only an idiot would bug out to live in the forest or live off the land. And this is the big problem. People's perception, they see bugging out, they immediately think of people going into the woods, into the forest, onto the land and surviving for however long it may take. And the reality of that is there are very, very few people that have the skill set to be able to do that for an extended period of time, and especially if they have a significant other and children in tow. When prepping was called survival, it was the go-to thing. If you were a male, perhaps young, and you were just getting into your survival or prepping, the main thing that seemed to be on the agenda was having a bug-out bag. And loads of people will say that isn't the way it goes. However, if you're of that mindset that that's the first prep you do, build a bug-out bag, that isn't necessarily a waste of time. If you've done very little else to prepare for a disaster or an issue when you're at home, that bug-out bag should have in it the means to treat water, to make it drinkable, which is a good one. Perhaps an alternative method to be able to cook your food, some emergency rations, a first aid kit, and generally get you out of trouble kit. So don't dismiss it completely. This video, however, wants to look at the categories, the types of things that may occur and the likelihood of them occurring that could force you to evacuate, bug out, your place of home to somewhere that hopefully is safer. To try and get my point across, I've sort of created 4 categories. One being a very localised event, such as at your home. 2 is localised, which could be your street or your surrounding streets of where you live. 3 is regional, could be your town, your city, or even perhaps your county that's experiencing the drama. And 4 is a national event. One that, to be fair, especially in the UK, is pretty much unlikely to occur. That would be an incident that is widespread throughout the country, or at least a very large proportion of it. So they're the 4 categories that I've tried to break it down, the sort of levels of incident, if you like, that would result in you perhaps having to evacuate from your current location. Now what I want to do is move on to perhaps what would cause you to have to evacuate and perhaps where you could go. So going back to category 1, which was your home. Type of incident: house fire, flood, structural damage. And if that was to occur, where are you likely to go? a friend's home, a member of your family, perhaps a hotel, or just sleep in your vehicle. Whilst it's a disaster for you, it isn't necessarily a disaster for anyone else. So there still is infrastructure at this point. It is still possible to purchase items, to go somewhere that's safer, to feed yourself, hydrate yourself, stay warm. The next category, which is number 2, is a localised event. And that could be your street or your surrounding streets. So it's no longer just your home that's affected, it's part of your street or surrounding streets that are experiencing problems. So the incident is likely to be the same as it was for your home, but on a larger scale, where we're going from just perhaps your property having a house fire. It could be that half a dozen houses in your street are actually on fire or flooded out, or something's happened, gas explosion, something like that, and there's structural damage to not only your property but the surrounding properties. So it's a bigger issue. It will have more of a drain on local resources and the emergency services. For this, you're likely to leave your property, and it will be exactly the same as category 1 was, but the chances are there is going to be some sort of aid set up. If it's not just your home, it's a number of homes, then you're going to have charities and organisations that kick in to open up church halls, community centres, that type of thing, somewhere for you to go, to be out of the weather, if need be, get your head down, have something to drink, something to eat, and basically you've got a base to operate from. Then number 3 is a regional incident, and this could be your entire town or city, or a large proportion of it, or potentially even part of your county or your whole county. And the type of incidents here would be exactly the same as they were in 1 and 2, plus acts of terrorism, war, very severe flooding. I'm thinking Thames Barrier gives up the ghost, etc. Severe civil unrest, so it's not just a few youths that have decided to kick off and set fire to a car. It could be a large demographic that has got the ump with another demographic, and it's turning into a raging battle in your town or your street or your city. Or something as bad as a nuclear incident or an accident. There might be a nuclear accident and you're downwind of it. If you think of Chernobyl, parts of Ukraine there, it was whole towns that had to be evacuated. So where are you going to go? Again, it's going to be the same as 1 and 2. However, things like hotels, if it's a regional incident, chances are they're going to be fully booked very quickly. So you may not have access to hotels. Roads are going to start to be gridlocked, and that's going to impede your evacuation. Some roads you may find are actually closed just to allow the emergency services unhindered access to and from. The time it would take to set up aid centres or community halls, church halls, that sort of thing, is going to be greatly extended. It's no longer just perhaps a couple of hundred people that may be affected. Potentially this could be well into the tens of thousands, if not more. So it's going to take them much, much longer time to set up some sort of aid centre. The emergency services at this point are going to start to be overwhelmed. 999 calls, they're not going to cope with the amount of calls that they're receiving, and their response is going to be limited. Then finally, I suppose it's a worst case scenario, it would be a national event, which is category 4. And that's going to be potentially something that affects the whole of your country, or perhaps a very large proportion of it. And the type of incident we're talking about here is perhaps a nuclear war, nuclear exchange, invasion. We're relatively lucky, we're on an island, so invasion is a little bit more difficult. In saying that then makes evacuation pretty difficult. Can't just cross a border, we've got to cross seas to actually get somewhere safer. Or it could be something along the lines of, I don't know, an asteroid impact or other end-of-life event. So it really is the big one. Where are you going to go? To be fair, if it's category 4, you are on your own. No emergency services, no community centres as such. It's going to be you, your skills, and whatever kit you can carry and keep hold of for however long you can actually survive. Eventually, after a category 4, we might get foreign aid if it was in the UK, or it might be something that the United Nations or the Red Cross or whatever, but it's not going to be any time soon. Now, disaster can strike at any time. Let's face it, the sensible thing to do if you can is that we are going to bug in, which basically means you're going to stay at home, which is where you're comfortable and your belongings are, your food and everything else. So, as I said, you're not going to evacuate or bug out unless there is a threat to life. You're going to stay at home. You can have 2 years worth of food in every survival item and every piece of Gucci kit in your home. But if disaster strikes when you're not at home, you're buggered. That's when you need to have, if you use a vehicle, a decent vehicle kit and a get home bag. And you need to really think about that. And it's not just for you, it's going to be again for your significant others and to a certain extent your children. You're going to have items that will cover them should you be unable to get to your home. If you're working full time, then the chances are potentially from say 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 in the evening, and somewhere in between that, for 5 days a week you are away from your home. So being fully prepped at home is good, but if you or your partner and the children are not at home when disaster strikes, you've got problems. And that's something that you need to seriously think about. Category 1 and 2, it would be prudent to have something like a 24-hour kit. Just a day sack that's got a bottle of water in it, or 2, some snacks, mobile phone charger, battery bank, paper copies of important documents. It could be a passport, deeds to your property, insurance certificates, etc., etc. By all means, you can have your mobile phone and have access to digital copies, be it on the cloud or through company websites, because we're going to assume that if it's just category 1 or 2, the infrastructure is still working. But it would be prudent, because if your phone got broke or damaged, that you have still got access. Yeah, you know your passwords, you know your policy numbers, etc., etc., for your insurance and for everything else, so that you can actually try to get your life rebuilt and back together. So everybody should have, as a minimum, in my opinion, please tell me if I'm wrong, stick it in the comments, a go bag that is going to sustain them for at least 24 hours. Now if you look at say category 2, where something's happened and you've left your property and you are not going to a hotel, but you're going to a community centre or a church hall, think about what you're going to have when you get there. It might be quite sparse, might have some tables and chairs, not going to be comfortable. If you're going to have to get your head down or sleep, you're going to be on the floor, potentially it's going to be cold, it's going to be uncomfortable. So in your go bag for that sort of situation, having everything else that I've mentioned, but also perhaps a sleep mat or a roll mat, a blanket or a light sleeping bag, you have to make that decision. And again, it has to be for your partner as well and for your children. Some snacks, some drinking water and everything else to sustain you for a day or a couple of days until you can start getting the ball rolling and you're relocated by local government or councils or not. Yeah, but your life can start to be rebuilt however difficult it may be. When we get onto a category 3 type incident, which is potentially your whole town or a large portion of it, or even parts of your county that there are problems, then in my opinion, for something that's going to make you evacuate your home and your town because it's that bad, then it is a full-on 72 hour bag. Because if you actually look, there might be 20,000 people in your town, there could substantially be 70,000 people. If it's a town that's being evacuated, you've got major problems. You're not going to be looking at hotels, they're going to be fully booked. Community centres, again, it's going to take them an extended period of time to jack that up to get that organised, and a church hall and a community centre or a school hall, that sort of thing, is perhaps only going to be able to house a couple of hundred people. And if you've got sort of, absolutely tens of thousands of people coming out, it's going to run out of space. It is going to be a miserable time if you're actually in that environment. So in my opinion, if you think there is a possibility that you would have something like category 3, then you do need the full 72 hour bag out bag. And when I say that, I'm talking about you need something to sleep on, sleep in and sleep under. You need to be able to treat water, you need emergency rations, a first aid kit and everything else that you would have in your 24 hour kit, and some warm clothing, etc. Because let's face it, if it's category 3, potentially you're going to be homeless. If you've got a significant other and children, you might be able to rough it, but you've got to think about them as well. So that is a major step up in your bugging out or evacuation strategy, and you've got to give it some serious thought. If it's a category 4, then potentially there is nowhere to go. Yeah. If it's an act of war, a nuclear war, you've got to do what you've got to do. You've got to go where you can go. And if you're thinking about taking equipment, deeds to your property and that sort of thing is pretty much gone out the window now, isn't it? You can use it as tinder, because if it's that bad, the chances are that you're not going to have much to come back to. So it really is going to be more survival tools, and you're not so much looking at a 72 hour bag, you're then going along the inch bag, the I'm never coming home. And you're never coming home because you haven't got a home to go to, but you don't know where you're going to be going anyway in that type of scenario. It is going to be grim and loads of people are not going to be able to survive. So that's basically my thoughts on bugging out. You've got the fantasy of it and you've got the reality. On the thumbnail, the fantasy side, I've shown a hammock in someone camping. In the reality, that photo that's on the thumbnail is actually people evacuating Ukraine when Pekka invaded. So they're the two opposites, if you like, and if you're prepared, hopefully you are going to fall somewhere in between the two. But depending on what you think the risks are and the probability of them occurring will be how you devise your bug out or evacuation plans and what you intend to carry. Enough of me. I hope it's given you food for thought. I really would love to see your comments. Remember, I'm in the UK and population density is, I believe, probably 7 or 8 times more than what it is, for instance, in the US. Yes, we've got woods. No, it won't sustain a large population of people trying to live there. Should you have a bug out bag? Yes, always. Just get rid of the notion that it's running off to the woods and doing your bushcraft. It isn't. The reality is that you're going to be seeking aid somewhere else. It doesn't mean to say you don't need equipment to help you get over a difficult time in your life. Enough of my waffling. It is a remembrance weekend. Let's make sure we give some thought to those that have fallen, that have given and made the ultimate sacrifice to keep us, you, me, pretty safe. Take care. Thank you for watching.